Here in the Horn of Africa lies Somalia, a country most known to us because of Al-Shabaab, piracy, terrorism, and the biggest consumer of cat. A country that has struggled with instability for almost 30 years now. Some even call it a failed state with an extremely hostile political and business environment. Somalis are a contradiction. Within Somalia, they are a very broken down society. Outside of Somalia, they are the most successful, honest, and trustworthy business people. It is the same force that pulls them together that pushes them apart. So why are they the most entrepreneurial people in and outside Africa? Look, I'll share with you a perspective about Somalia that goes past conflict, cat, terrorism, and piracy. You know, the popular narratives, right? I believe that Africans have a lot to learn from the experience and practices of business and entrepreneurial Somalis. Let's begin in 1988 when a civil war broke out in Somalia that ravaged the country, leading to the departure of thousands of people outside the country to make new homes in the United Kingdom, USA, Canada, Kenya, Sweden, UAE, and South Africa, and so on. In South Africa, a small section of Johannesburg's Mayfair neighborhood offered sanctuary to Somali refugees fleeing the war. They created a Little Mogadishu, a 3-block wide replica slice of Somalia. Little Mogadishu has streets lined with restaurants and Somali-owned shops offering money transfers, travel, clothing, and spicy aromas from Somali restaurant kitchens. The Western Cape of South Africa also has a growing Somali population with over 5,000 Somalis living and trading in Belleville Central Business District. They on average outperformed local traders, creating a blueprint for small business success. Selling everything from underwears to internet services, all at low prices. In the United States, the majority settled in Minnesota, hosting one of the largest Somali communities in the Somali diaspora, with estimates ranging from 30,000 to 100,000 Somalis. The city is home to many businesses, just like South Africa. They are so successful that they have their own strip of malls like this one. In the USA, the most popular Somali perhaps is Ilhan Omar, a Somali woman who became the first Somali American elected to Congress from Minnesota. Somali's business success starts from childhood, whereas other African communities emphasize formal education as a way of making it in life. For Somalis, they traditionally encourage their kids to start businesses first and then consider Western education later. These are the same kind of business values that other business-minded communities inculcate in their children. There is a universal belief among Somali entrepreneurs that they can become rich very quickly, and therefore they need to hurry up and start businesses so that they can get to the promised land and strike a fortune in the process. Now, have you ever struggled to raise capital? Well, Somalis have a simple formula on how they can raise capital. Here it goes. Somali entrepreneurs tend to raise capital mainly from family, friends, and acquaintances with no discussion about the rate of return or conditions of repayment. A good example was highlighted in a survey carried out in Minnesota, where a group of 3 Somali entrepreneurs who wanted to start a restaurant each invested their personal savings of $30,000. Next, the 3 approached family members as well as acquaintances and friends to invest in their new restaurant. In the end, the partners raised an impressive $300,000 from about 20 investors. Now, since most Somalis are Muslims, they abide by the Islamic law practice of interest-free loans, often without contracts. The ability to raise cash from family and friends means that entrepreneurs can start businesses without banks or mainstream financial lending institutions. This gives Somalis a competitive advantage in the countries they settle in against the locals. When natural disasters or social unrest affects Somalis, members are ready to provide a helping hand where needed. They often give even job opportunities to new arrivals still finding their feet. In some cases, they might even offer shares in their businesses to hard-working countrymen. Now, the ultimate Somali business secret rotates around one major factor, and that is trust. In most places where Somalis run businesses, they have always repeat customers for this reason and many more. They exhibit trust in their lending practices as well as running of their businesses. There is one thing I came across called Hawara that is very common among Somalis. It is an informal money transfer system that I would literally call trust on steroids. And here is how it works. Say Farah lives in Nairobi but wants to send money to his brother Ali in Dubai. Farah will find a Hawarada or a Hawara agent, provides him with the details of the transaction, which includes the name of his brother, that is Ali, the city of residence, and a password. Farah will also get in touch with his brother Ali to provide him with the password and the details as well. The Hawarada agent in Nairobi then contacts another Hawarada agent in Dubai through his list of contacts and asks him to meet up with Ali to provide him with Farah's cash. Now, they meet and Ali gets the money after correctly stating the password he received from Farah. After the transaction, the Hawarada in Dubai now is owed that amount by the Hawarada back in Nairobi. The element of trust sees goods cost less due to the shared costs for the logistics and economies of scale via the global social distribution networks. According to Francis Fukuyama, an American political scientist and political economist, people and countries with high trust equities such as Japan, America, and Germany are economically successful. In Fukuyama's world, trust is subservient to market efficiency. If we trust, we will prosper, and if we don't, the loss is to be measured in financial and not moral terms. Perhaps I should also emphasize Somalis rarely trust people who are non-Somalis. They like to intimately know the person with whom they are dealing with. For the most part, they are very warm, forthcoming, and welcoming. But in the business world of Somali entrepreneurs, it is not what you know, it is who you know and who you trust. Somalis are also high risk takers who don't fear losses. They spread risk through investing in several small businesses, or often co-owned by several investors. Being a resilient people, Somalis are willing to take risks and accept smaller profits. They view their shops as long-term investment and look to grow their capital collectively. And if the price is right, they are willing to sell their businesses to local investors and move on to the next investment, usually much bigger than the previous one. The other thing is that there is no question that Somali entrepreneurs are ambitious and hardworking people. Some of them work more than 16 hours a day in a full-time job at the same time running their businesses. This is how they have managed to expand and create business empires. A good example is in Kenya, in a place called Eastleigh, where Somali refugees began converting their rooms into small shops during the day. The lodging moved into a mall hosting shops selling clothes, cosmetics, shoes, and cheap electronics. And in their courtyard featured Somali women draped in gold for sale, and money changers offering the best rates in town, clustered around the narrow entrances. Business boomed, and it's said that over $1.5 billion is invested in Eastleigh alone. Starting in the late 2012, a mass exodus of Somali residents was reported after a prolonged period of harassment by the Kenyan police and the public. Hundreds of Somali entrepreneurs withdrew 10 to 40 billion shillings from their bank accounts, intending to reinvest most of that money back in Somalia. The collective departures mostly affected Eastleigh's real estate sector as landlords struggled to find Kenyans able to afford the high rates of rent for the apartments and shops vacated by the Somalis. The success in Eastleigh led to a rapid replication of this Somali model. All of this proceeded in an area of crumbling infrastructure, terrible roads, and decades of state neglect in general. The success of Somalis comes with its challenges as well. You see, most of the businesses they are engaged in are small-scale trading in electronics, fabrics, and restaurants, which puts them in direct competition with local investors who feel this should be a reserve for the nationals. As a result of this, there have been clashes involving locals and Somalis in countries like Kenya, Turkey, and South Africa, among others. In countries where locals have tried to replicate their business practices to directly compete with them, the locals have tried everything, but they have always fell short when it comes to trust. So wrapping this up, the ultimate secret to Somali business success is trust. If you're struggling in business, try it and see what happens. I know many Africans who, if they worked on their trust issues, would be more successful in business just like the Somalis.